Hi everyone, have a good day, every one of you. I am happy to have me here for this seminar. I am Joseph Thoundayil, a research student in the University of Santo Tomas, Manila, in Philippines. The title of my research is Predictive Role of Self-Efficacy and Psychological Distress of Indian Adolescents During the COVID-19 Pandemic. Introduction. During the pandemic situation, lockdown, quarantine, and social isolation are the most common public health measures taken to prevent the transmission of the coronavirus infection. Though these restrictions could limit the spread of virus, they have had created devastating impact on the lives of individuals globally. Many studies have cautioned that COVID-19 pandemic might cause worldwide mental health issues. Quarantine and the lockdown mark psychologically painful and unpleasant conditions of isolation. According to studies of Namdar and others, longer the quarantine period, higher the chances of psychological distress and symptoms of PTSD. Researchers on the influence of the pandemic identifies that lockdown and restrictive measures have severely damaged the mental health of society in all ages, especially of adolescents. That these measures lessen their social and physical activities, interactions, sleep patterns, and prolonged use of cell phones and other electronic gadgets. Psychological distress is an adverse personal trait characterized by the unspecified symptoms of anxiety, stress, and depression, and marked by the feelings of sadness, loneliness, discouragement, hopelessness, and suicidality. The age of adolescence is known for its physiological and psychological transformations, and the social interactions, when there is a blockage to it, will result in the psychological distress. It is also observed that all the adolescents are not psychologically distressed because of the pandemic restrictions and isolations. Different studies have found that those who have better self-efficacy can maintain their mental health and effectively handle the crisis. Self-efficacy is the belief in one's skill to plan and move out the steps needed to accomplish specific goals. It is also the judgment about oneself to perform a specific task successfully. Self-efficacy is one of the variables that have a substantial part in person's mental health. Personalities with strong self-efficacy set more challenging objectives, focus on the potential rather than the obstacles, and handle stressful situations more effectively. It also plays a substantial part in psychological healing following the traumatic experiences. Objective of research. The present research seeks to assess the link between self-efficacy and psychological distress among teenagers of the island surrounding the Kochi city. The hypotheses of the study are 1. There is a negative correlation between self-efficacy and psychological distress of adolescents in the islands. Second, self-efficacy has a predictive role in the psychological distress of the adolescents during the pandemic. Research setting. Participants. The participants were 600 teenagers of the 10th and the 12th grades from 9 schools in the urban islands. Number of the girls were 330 and boys were 270. 10th grade students were 310 and 12th grade students were 290. Instruments. 1. Demographic profile consisting of sex, grade, and the name of the school. Second, DAS-21, Depression, Anxiety, Stress Scale 21. It's a self-report questionnaire of 21 items by Lowy Bond and Lowy Bond. 3. GSES, General Self-Efficacy Scale is a 10-item scale to assess general self-efficacy beliefs by Schornusser and Jerusalem. Procedure and methodology. The data was collected after the first wave of pandemic in India in March 2021. The students were present in schools to prepare for board exams. The participants and parental consents were gained initially. The data was statistically analyzed using SPSS version 23. Mean and standard deviation computed and analyzed. Used inferential analysis to test the hypothesis. The Pearson correlation utilized to test relationship between psychological distress and self-efficacy. Linear regression used to predict self-efficacy's influence on the psychological distress. Results. Table 1. Correlation between DAS21 and GSES. The mean of the DAS21 was 17.58, standard deviation was 7.76. Mean of the GSES was 22.01, standard deviation was 8.69. The R value between the two variables were minus 0.763, which shows that there was a negative correlation between the psychological distress and the general self-efficacy of the adolescents. Table 2. Regression model. The result of the regression analysis is that R-square value is 0.582. This R-square result indicated that the predictor variable, here the self-efficacy, is accounted for a high percent of change in the predicted variable, here the psychological distress, which shows that the psychological distress of the adolescents were greatly influenced by the self-efficacy of the adolescents. Conclusion. The Pearson coefficient identifies that there is a negative correlation between self-efficacy and psychological distress in the adolescents of the urban islands in Kochi city, Kerala. That is, when they have higher self-efficacy, the psychological distress is very low, and when self-efficacy is very low, they experience higher levels of psychological distress. The linear regression analysis indicated that self-efficacy impacted psychological distress of adolescents, which identifies that 58.2% of variance in psychological distress is explained by the self-efficacy. So the self-efficacy has a predictive role in the psychological distress of the adolescents during the pandemic. Thank you for listening to me, and have a good time, every one of you. Thank you.